I recently posted a video that in the grand scheme of my channel got quite a bit of success, which you can watch here, and the topic in question was, what if D&D classes weren't restricted to certain subclasses? Like, they could just pick any of them. You want to be a Way of Kensei rogue? Go for it. Well, then came the question of, okay, pretty good idea, but where did that come from? Well, it wasn't from me thinking, how can I improve D&D? It wasn't from Unearthed Arcana or anything like that. It was from my brain, or at least, I guess, an idea that I had. And that idea wasn't for D&D. It was for a game that I'm making, or at least games that I'm making, because I think this in terms of character creation. I think this in terms of class creation, or, yeah, character creation. What if classes weren't restricted to paths that you take? Yes, they are focused normally by the designers to be quite narrowed down. The rogue has this sort of thing, and the bard has this sort of thing, but what if they weren't? What if your classes, the archetypes that you choose, had things like subclasses, but were instead in my system called themes or tropes or whatever you want to call them? The name is pending depending on what people like the best, because I'm looking to see what people think is the best in terms of feedback. And I will probably post a full sort of produced video about this concept in the future, or at least this design concept in the future. But for now, for this video, I want to talk about this idea and why I think it's one of the most unique and one of my favourite, and hopefully you will like this feature in terms of the game that I'm making. And if you like that video, and a lot of people did, hopefully by watching this you will have a bit of an intrigue building for what I'm making, because it follows a similar concept. So, welcome to Tabletop Tidbits, where we talk about TTRPG stuff, the games we love, the games that I love, and hopefully having a bit more of a connection with you, the viewer, because I want you guys and me to build a bit of a community here on this side of the YouTube space. So, my design, what is my intention with my game Sanctum, and also, some people might have heard me say this before, Blaster. Sanctum being my sort of fantasy, well, we all like D&D, we all like Pathfinder, Paizo, these different games. I wanted to make what I feel, what I think a sort of fantasy TTRPG should be, more focused along the lines of developing, like, progressing the story. Other games are focused on narrative, some's on, like, combat and other kinds of things. Mine was focused on adventure. How can I maximize adventure in fantasy? And the same sort of thing is carrying along to Blaster, where I thought, I don't want sci-fi, someone to pick up a sci-fi game and get overwhelmed by science knowledge when they could be enjoying science fiction. I don't want people to be overwhelmed by science fiction or whatever. I want it to be fun and simple and more adventure focused, someone wielding a blaster and with a cape billowing in the wind, zooming off into the stars and having a blast of a time. Star Wars, more pulpy adventures, The Fifth Element, that kind of thing. Those sort of things, what I want with these sort of games that I'm making. Pulpy, adventure focus, and fun for people to play. Adventure, fun is the focus. So, why am I mentioning this in my character creation video, or at least talking about this video that I had where concepts for classes and themes and backgrounds and subclasses aren't really connected? Well, it's because I trust that people playing the game, newbies and, veterans in the sphere, will have fun and be able to grasp the concept of, you pick a class and you combine it with this other source of power, and in mixing them, you can create what you like. Sounds cool? I think so too, that's why I designed it. Now, in terms of how they differ, at least I'll focus on Sanctum first, I think, for the majority of this video. So, Sanctum, in terms of its character creation process, I went through a bunch of iterations for this. I went with a very, very similar to D&D approach, and then very much scrapped that because I thought, no, I want to be different. I want to take strides and do something different. The D20 was shut out the window. I went for a different dice system. I've tried for different dice systems along the way, which isn't atypical for a design team on a bigger team or a bigger game to do. They'll go through a couple of ideas, and I've done the same thing, but just on my own instead. And for Sanctum, character creation, it's went through classes. It's went through no classes at all. It's went through the idea of complete freedom, which I've talked about on the channel before, where you don't pick a class and a theme, whatever, you pick just abilities. Wholesale. There's a massive list of them and you just pick them out. Think of it like picking a feat when you level up, except that is everything that you do. You only pick the feats. You don't pick you know, like the fighting style and the other things, or you don't get pigeonholed down into a very narrow path. You could pick what you like, which sounds cool, but when I play tested it out, sorry, I noticed something. Giving absolute freedom, even if it's focused on fantasy, it created a massive case of analysis paralysis. It made character creation take way longer than I wanted. I didn't want it to be complex. I wanted it to be simple. I wanted people to pick up the game and have a grand time and be able to make characters super quick and get into the game and have fun and all these simple choices. Oh, it's so cool, so flavorful. But that didn't really happen. They could make characters however they wanted. But it wasn't simple. It would take way too long. All these options. It was good, but it was like the GURPS and basic role-playing where, unless you're a veteran, unless you like to sit and read every single option, and you have the time to do so, multiple session zeros worth of ideas, then, yeah, it's a bit of an ache to go through that process, and I didn't want that. So, I skipped past that, and I thought, okay, that idea, I've went through so many iterations, I'm getting frustrated, what should I do? So I thought, okay, I'll go back to Blaster, and see if I can do what I initially intended, which was, the first game that I wanted to make was indeed a sci-fi game. But I did go back to fantasy because I thought that I could bring something new to this fantasy idea. I was inspired. So I went back to Sanctum. Then I went back to Blaster with this character creation issue. And the reason I did was because while Sanctum had this very like open, pick the abilities and assemble them, that is your character sort of approach, I went back to Blaster and thought, well, what if you didn't just have a full swath of ideas? What if instead they were all packages? Like you took, how to explain it? So, sci-fi character. Imagine you are something like a Star Wars character. Are you a Jedi? Are you like a roguish sort of Han Solo character? Are you someone who's a bit more manipulating of magic? Are you gravity born? That sort of thing. Can you manipulate time and space? These sort of sci-fi ideas. Well, what if you could combine these together and get a character? Sounds similar to Sanctum, but I thought, well, what if it was just, you pick two of these quite, like, bigger packages together? You know, you could take, like, the Ferromancy or the Metalmancer sort of guy who could, like, you know, make the iron in his blood turn into, like, an arm blade, like Terminator, mixed with the pilot. So you're this sort of, like, metallurgy pilot character, like, do what you will with that. Sounds like a fun sort of combination system, but, again, a similar thing happened where you would have all these options and it would get really complex because how do I combine these to get the best build or idea or how these make sense? And this overwhelming feeling that I was giving, level 1 characters, brand new to this system, I didn't want that to happen. So I thought, what else can I do? How can I boil it down even more into the essentials? Make it so that character creation is snappy, quick, and easy to understand while being full of flavour and options. And I've done this, and I think I've got to a point now where I think that it's very close to being done. I can think of one more thing, like the intrigues. If anyone's watched any of my previous videos, the word intrigues is a character sort of creation concept that I thought of, and then I'm not gonna name the game, but a game came out where it had a page with a big list of things, and they were exactly like the design to intrigue. So I'm glad I posted those videos out to show that I'm not just copying my way through trying to make my own original game. But I think the character creation process is fairly done as it is. And that modern iteration, which I'm on now, is you pick a class and you pick a theme. 2 choices. And in terms of what choices, it depends on the system I'm talking about. Sanctum, there are 4 classes. Now, you might sit there and go, what? 4 classes? I'm playing D&D 5e, where there's 12 classes, or 13, if you include the Artificer. Why would I downgrade to 4? Well, I'll tell you why. It's not a downgrade at all. It's a choice that has been founded in quite a few games, and I very much agree, because if you look at the scope of the D&D classes, you can sit and say, no, actually, they are different, which they are. I understand that completely, but they fall into categories. They fall into the specialists, the people who cast spells, the people who also cast spells, but they differ in terms of arcane and sort of a more spiritual, religious sort of idea, and people who are really good at fighting. Like, whatever flavour of fighting you call fighting, you know, archery or fighting up close or being a barbarian as character. These all boil into 4 categories, and that is, if you look at it, a magic user, a sort of priest or that sort of character, a warrior, and a rogue. So that's exactly what you'll get. You'll get the mage, the priest, the rogue, and the warrior. 4 classes that cover fighting, specialist sort of thing, mixed with, like, you know, rogue, everything you think what a rogue is, sneak, expert, that sort of shtick, sneaking around, backstabbing, that sort of shtick. Mages, magic. Priests, also magic, but in a different sort of way. Mages focus on the mind and being utility spell usage. Meanwhile, priests are more like their force of will, which, this is just an idea that I think me and a couple of people have had. When I think of a priest, I don't think of someone who's incredibly intelligent or incredibly wise in particular. When I think of a priest, I think of someone who's very much like a force of will. Their god gives them the power to impose their will upon others, upon the world around them, and they have a strong sense of confidence within themselves. They are driven. That's why paladins have a wisdom and charisma sort of focus, because I think priests are more charismatic and more of like the sort of heralds of the gods than the book nerds of the gods. So that's why you've got the array. You've got the strengthy warriors, the agility rogues, the mind and mental focused mages, and the will focused priest, which is exactly how it works in Sanctum. But besides the classes, what about this talk of themes or subclasses? Well, there's no subclasses per class. Instead, you can choose a theme, and there are 20 themes. They range from things like the accursed theme, which is all about being a witch sort of character, debuffing people, hexing people, and applying a negative to people that your whole team can benefit from. There is the brawler theme, which is just you being a fist fighter, being someone who can uppercut someone into the ceiling. You can be someone like the Scion, which gives you mentalist-like abilities. Oh no, it's called the Mentalist. There we go. Mentalist-like abilities. There's stuff like the Elemental, which gives you sort of elementalist-like abilities, as you might expect from the title. The Profane theme, the Martial theme. There are like so many of these themes. Well, 20. Bloody hell. So many. There's 20 themes. But what that means is 4 classes, 20 themes. That's a lot of like diversity. One playthrough, you could play a mage plus the elemental and play the elementalist, but you could also the next playthrough be like, oh, I like the elementalist, let's go for a warrior plus elemental, and now whenever I wield a mundane weapon I can change the damage type into any energy type I want. Is that guy weak to fire? Well, fire sword, that sort of shtick. So that's pretty cool. You have classes plus themes. But is that it? You're not coming here saying like, oh, I've come up with a new idea. There's like 4 classes and 20 things you can choose. No. Within both the classes and the themes, there are 20 abilities, plus the first level ability. So let me explain. When you pick your class and theme, of course, you'll have your class, your theme, you've made the choice of class, theme. There's 2 choices for you. But then, what that gives you is very much, here's the thing. I did go with the idea of you pick a class and a theme, and then, once you pick that, you then have to trace through the entirety of all the abilities those 2 things give you to get your first level abilities, which again resulted in the exact same thing of, here you are first level. Here's just all of the stuff that you could pick through. Even games that you see now, they have a quite small, limited ability range. Let's name some examples. Okay, so we have Daggerheart. First level characters, they pick up their first level domain cards. They're not given all of all the domain classes things at once. So as a result, you're narrowed into a small pickings. So I wanted it so that first level characters can just pick a class and a theme and they get an ability. For example, if you are a mage, you get an ability called Magic Tricks, which gives you some utility-like stuff. They're kind of like, I always do this in videos, terminology that we know, but I'm not trying to copy. Anyway, Magic Tricks gives you cantrip-like abilities without them being actually cantrips. You can do stuff like animating objects what does its intended purpose. The window opens, the door opens, the knob turns. A sewing kit sews something, that sort of thing. You also get another sort of utility spell. You can like cause a light to appear, you can cause a minor push, stuff like this. And that is like the ability that you get as a mage, but you can also choose things like your style. Do you want a longer range for your spells? Do you want to have the ability to wear better armor? That sort of shit. There's 4 styles, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but so you get to choose your class, what style you get, but other than that, you get the magic tricks thing, and it says, here you go, you can choose 2 spells in this class. And to help you along, every ability, sort of section in a class or a theme, and the spells, or I'll mention these later, the strikes that you get, they're evenly numbered, and more significantly, not just evenly numbered, you might see, oh, here you get D8 abilities to choose from, or you get D12 spells to choose from, or D12 abilities here, D10 here. All the abilities are arranged in either 6, 4, 10, 8, or 12 number of abilities, spells, and strikes. So when you're told you can pick a spell or a strike, you can just roll on the tables instead, or well, the list of them instead, and giving you the ability to either meticulously choose, or you can just go, right, level 1, let's see what my character is, whee, and throw the dice and then get a character, and just get the abilities from the dice. You'll see that quite a lot in Sanctum, where all these options, they give you the ability to just pick up a dice and roll for it and go, boom, that's my character, excellent. So, beyond that, we have the class, and it gives you an ability. What does the theme give? It depends on the theme. If you choose the Elementalist theme, or the Elemental theme, sorry, it'll give you the ability to go, right, I can pick whatever damage type I want when I deal damage, as long as that damage type is something like fire, ice, shock, pulse, that sort of shtick. So as a result, it means that no matter what class you're playing, you can get the benefit of that ability. You can change your damage type. You're casting a spell that deals only this specific kind of damage. Not with me. I can change this lightning bolt into a fire bolt, a pulse bolt, a ice bolt, that sort of thing. And the same works for other classes. If you're a priest who does some sort of like damning shout at someone, you can change it into an elemental ability. You can change the sword or the dagger that the rogue or the warrior wields into a elemental like ability, sword, blade. So I like this sort of combination idea. And again, 4 classes, 20 themes. That is a bunch of combinations, and something that's quite small, but I'll mention it here. All of the themes have something that's called an epithet, or there's 4 epithets per theme. And the purpose of this is, if you pick this theme, it says, this is what people in the world, or you might call yourself, as a result of picking this theme and this class. For example, as I mentioned previously, if you choose the mage and the elemental, you will get the elementalist epithet. It'll say you are an elementalist, but feel free to call yourself whatever you want. It's just that when you have these 2 things together, that's what you might think. Think of it like when people say, what kind of bard are you? And you go, oh, I'm a college of X, sort of thing. Well, if you introduce yourself in that instance as this, it's the same thing for Sanctum. If you are an elemental mage, you'll call yourself an elementalist. If you are an elemental priest, you'll call yourself an avatar instead. If you are an elemental rogue, I can't remember what I said, but every single theme has 4 epithets, 1 for each class, so you get an ability to, well, you have the ability to walk around going, oh, I'm not a mage, I am a elementalist, or I'm a scion, or I am a battle mage, that sort of thing. All sorts of options it can go for, 4 classes, 20 themes, mix all this together. It's a bunch. 80? Yes. I doubt myself, but yeah, 80 choices they can go for there. But it doesn't stop there. At level 1, not only do you get to choose your class and your theme, you also get to put together a first level improvement. And as you level up, and there are 10 levels in Sanctum, you can make, of course, 10 overall of these level up improvements. And you get one at first level. So the question is, what are you going to choose? Because the choices are, do you want to buff your health? Do you want to be able to gain another fatigue point, which is, it's kind of held its place in terms of its design. So if you want to look at the previous videos in Sanctum, they do a similar thing. They allow you to succeed when you fail, or when that counts for saves or attack rolls or spells. And you can also avoid certain things. You can give yourself another action if you spend a fatigue point, that sort of thing. So they're like a get out of jail free card, but if you gain too many, you can gain debuffs and then die. So it's a risk reward sort of thing. So do you want to have more health, the ability to gain more fatigue? Do you want to increase your stats by 1, which by 1 doesn't sound that great, but again, if you know anything about Sanctum, you know the math is pretty small. So a +1 is a significant bonus, especially when you're rolling 2d8, not a d20, not d100, 2d8. A +1 is quite a significant increase in percentage of getting what you want for higher numbers. So that's pretty good. But the other ability is, the other improvement, is another ability. More health, more fatigue, more stats, or at level 1, if you wanted to, you could be like, right, I'm going to have a bunch of abilities. So what kind of choices do you have in terms of abilities? Well, in your class, in your chosen theme, there are 20 choices that you can make. And you can make a free one. You can get an ability. You can choose from these 2 things whenever you level up. And you also get a level up improvement. So you can go, right, this level, I'm going to choose, of course, my free ability from just leveling up. But my level up improvement, I'm also going to choose another ability. So I get to choose 2 abilities as we level up here. And you can make this choice as you go down. Character creation isn't just, right, you're level 5, that means you get extra attack, and it also means that you get this health increase, that sort of thing, if you're a fighter, or you're level 4, which means you can choose ability scores or a feat, but that's pretty much it, or level 3. None of that. When you level up in Sanctum, choices are yours. You can choose between a list of abilities, spells, strikes, whatever, from your class, and you also get to choose a list of 20 abilities, spells, or strikes. And when I say 20 ability, spells, or strikes, I mean each class and theme gives you a choice of 20 as a whole that compose of abilities, spells, and strikes. And how many depends on the theme or class in question. For example, you're not going to find any spells in the warrior class, but you will find them in the mage class. So you can make that choice. Do you want to have another spell? Do you want to have an ability to help you cast more spells if you're a mage? Do you want to lean over into your theme? And do you want to get a ability here, a strike here, a spell here from this theme? And you can dip into whichever one you want. When you level up, you aren't restricted to, well, I have to choose this one from my class. When you level up, you have your class and your theme, and the 20 abilities that you get from both to choose which one of these I want to make to build the perfect character, the best build. And of course, because there's all these choices, it tells you, hey, make whatever build you want, and if you want to go the builds that are quite powerful, let me tell you, it's possible. You can get like 3 levels into, I think it's like mage plus scion, so you can make like a psionic character, and you can make a character who can like pin someone to a wall with like a telekinetic grip, and as a result they're just stuck there, and anytime they try to escape you just go no, and you can hold them there. So it can be pretty grim in some situations. Sorry, I can't speak today, for the enemies, but this isn't the intention to make bullshit builds. The intention is to let you guys make what you want, because the abilities, some of them range in terms of being flavorful, some of them range in being quite potent in combat, some aren't. Some are great for once per session usage, which I love. I love once per session as a time frame, as opposed to once per long rest in D&D, for example. In this, the session is the time in which fun things happen. So having it be once per session, an ability to do something like I enter a state of awesomeness sort of thing. I enter a state of like maximum capacity, and as a result I have advantage on all these things. Or once per session I can make someone have a positive disposition towards me even if they had a negative disposition towards me before. That's pretty powerful, and also it's quite fitting for the debonair theme, which I just remembered. So as a result, you could choose whatever you want. You essentially have 40 abilities to choose from, or like choices to choose from, and you have 10 levels. So even if you spent all these ability all these extra ability, these level up improvements, even if you spend all of them on getting abilities, you'd still by the end have a whole suite of abilities and spells and strikes, but you couldn't get all of them. Instead, you get to choose which ones I want the most. And, I wish I had that one. GM, is there a way that I could get this one? Because I really want this ability. Well, that sounds like a perfect opportunity for GMs to give a unique reward. Do you train with someone? Do you train with your mentor? Do you go down into the bowels of the earth and you complete a personal goal? And as a result, the GM goes perfect. You can choose this ability as a result that seems fitting for the story, or, hey, you did this great thing that fits the core concept of your class or your character that we've all sort of seen at the table, so as a result, have a free ability. That sounds like a great reward, as opposed to just have a item, or some gold, or a person with some gold, or an item. So it gives you the ability as a player, as a GM, to kind of tailor your characters and what you want them to have, but also you could use them as rewards. That sounds really fun to me. So I like this sort of character creation concept, and I've run with it quite a bit now. I've tried to make it so interesting to go through. Like, you can make your character that gets stats from level 1, and they have a suite of abilities, but as you go up, you just get +1 ability, +1 ability, +1 ability, or you can choose, can I handle the ability to have even more abilities? That choice is up to you. I see more and more games now where people give the players choices to make, and they give the people playing, the players, choices as they level up, as opposed to just a narrow stream. And I get the benefit of a narrow stream is that you can just give someone the class, and as they level up, they have less choices. It's more streamlined. It's more fitting to this core concept of the class. But I want people to be able to pick up a warrior and be like, yeah, I'm a warrior, I'm great at fighting, but I want to basically be able to pick, if I wanted to, I have this character concept in mind, I'm going to pick the warrior and this other theme, and never pick any ability from my class and just go for the theme, because that first level ability that I get from the warrior actually feels quite fitting, but this theme actually feels more fitting for my character, so I'm going to go with the stuff on there. I want people to have these choices. Where do I put my abilities? Where do I get these from? Or, you could just pick up a dice and make the roll instead. Great, 7. That means I get I get this extra ability. That these choices are yours. So I like that a lot more in terms of just a flat number of abilities, or at least like a flat ability that you just get, or you're just given as a result of picking this class. I prefer this concept a lot better. And I don't want to throw shade anywhere, but I do like the idea that your class gives you these abilities, and as you level up, it's the same number of abilities. You don't get like abilities that are, I started out at level 1, I get these crap ones, then as I level up, I get these uber abilities that changes the game completely and makes the game just horrendous. The game is focused on adventure. Your character becomes more skilled as you go on and get more options in combat, or more options in play, but they don't become gods as a result, because that kind of removes the stakes from play, and it also jumbles up a couple of the other fun things about playing Sanctum, and that is, at any level, you can encounter an enemy, and it's either going to be quite dangerous or quite easy, depending on how we've made our choices. Are we pushing on into combat even though we're hurt? Probably going to have a bad time then. Or, I don't want to go into that too much. We're talking about character creation. So, I think this concept is fun and fantastic. So leaning over, as I promised, to Blaster. Sci-fi. And sci-fi, I don't know why I said it like that. Blaster is my intent to make a fun, adventure, pulpy, not worrying about all these sort of like intricacies and I have a science degree sort of feeling that people feel towards sci-fi. People see sci-fi as quite like grim and depressing and it's so overwhelming because how do I handle spaceships and like the rules for... I don't want that. And I also don't want that. I don't want that same sort of dread when people approach stuff like the character creation process. So it's a very similar concept. It's very similar. You have classes and you have themes. You get the synergy between your class and your theme, except the themes are more relevant to the setting that I'm trying to make with Blaster. There is the theme that's called the atomic theme, and as a result, they are people that are able to bend the harmony of the universe, to affect the physical world, to affect the atoms of the world. That's why it's called atomic, not because, you know, they're all about atomic bombs. Even though they have the ability to modify atoms, and yes, they can cause huge explosions. So, atomic themes, we have themes like Voyager, which are great for survival, travel, and also being a pilot. Because I didn't want to make a theme that was just pilot. Because the moment you start making very specific themes for the situation, it means that, oh, great, I'm a warrior pilot, but I'm not on a ship. So I suck. So what can I do here? So I didn't want that to be the thing. There are more quite dense packages of the themes. They're quite impactful for this idea of like what this sci-fi setting will be. When you read through them, I think you'll see what I mean. I thought I'd just post this video here because I wanted to talk about this sort of concept that I put up and people seem to enjoy and cause a lot of conversation around, and it was inspired not by D&D but about what I'm creating. So I wanted to make sure that there was at least a little record here, some damage control, some insurance to make sure that no one's thinking that I'm copying. And yeah, I wanted to make something quite unique and fun for the players, but something that didn't hinder or annoy any GMs as well. I wanted it to be quite freeform, but also narrow, so it didn't give you all this analysis paralysis. Instead, it was just quite thematic. You focus on your class and your theme. The choices you make are class and theme based, not just pick anything and have a very watered down approach to what your character even is now. Looking at what I've made, I think that it fits that idea. So, that's the end of the video there. I'll cut it off there. But, of course, in the comments, anyone that made it this far, bless your heart, but anyone that made it this far, do talk about in the comments what are your thoughts on this idea. I'd love to know any feedback. If you think about saying, oh, well, this is just this game's thing, I've heard that enough, and I've already talked about what feedback I would give to people who think that, in terms of, like, something might have a very similar concept, but its construction and its materialization when you get the book and read it is a very different thing. I've talked about this before with spells and like, oh, what if you could build your spells from scratch? And people said, actually, Ars Magica can do that. Except when I read Ars Magica in response to them comments, I thought, oh, they had no idea what they're talking about, because this is nothing like what I was talking about. So, tell me what you think. Do you think this is a strange idea? Does it sound very interesting? Does it sound like it might need something to sort of drive home the fantasy just from hearing what I've been talking about? If this is something that you like, I release some videos every once in a while talking about Sanctum and Blaster and that sort of thing, what I'm making. And I'm also thinking about maybe, in the future, quite near future probably, releasing something that you can buy, a game. A one-page ttrpg that I've been working on. Quite simple, quite funny, quite fun in its concept and mechanics. So, with that being said, I love you all, and I'll see you next time.